you. That's fascinating. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
To invite John, Dr. John Weinel, to the podium.
Yeah, so this talk's it's going to be kind of a bit of a overview of my new book, which is this one here. So it's called Explosions in the Mind, Composing Psychedelic Sounds and Visualizations. And well, yes. Okay. So yeah, basically, I'm going to talk a bit about kind of what this book is, I guess. So it essentially explores how you might compose sounds and visualizations that represent psychedelic hallucinations and synesthesia. So this has kind of been an interest of mine for quite a long time. I think I originally sort of became interested kind of in psychedelic art and music as a teenager, and have been kind of exploring it ever since in all kinds of different ways through sound, but also through sort of video and more recently sort of virtual reality and things like that. So it's a bit of a mixture. And essentially with this book, I'm kind of exploring my own creative projects in this area since around 2007. So it kind of begins with the stuff that I was doing as part of a PhD in music, and then goes right up to kind of recent projects with kind of VR and things like this. So it's quite a kind of personal book, and it's kind of talking about compositional methodologies with my own kind of work. So both the kind of artistic ideas and things, but also the sort of tactical approaches that I've used. And then that ultimately leads to 3 conceptual frameworks, which are kind of discussed at the end, which kind of consolidate all of this work into some kind of cohesive ideas, which hopefully could be used not just by me, but maybe by other people that are interested in this area too. And the book's in colour, which is nice, and it's got download links for loads of the music, videos, and the software that's discussed within it. So you don't have to just read about it, but you can also listen to it and watch it. So the book is part of the Palgrove Studies in Sound. So this is a series which is being edited by my colleague from Aalborg University, Professor Mark Grimshaw, who was a keynote here, I think, a couple of years ago. And there's lots of interesting work himself with sort of sound, presence, and immersion. There's some other really interesting books in this series. So this is just kind of a few of them, but Tom Garner's one looks at kind of sound and virtual reality. There's a new one which is looking at synesthesia as metacognition, which I haven't read yet, but we'll need to have a look at. Afrofuturism and yeah, Justin's sound and aesthetics of play. There's quite a few more as well, but that's just some of them. So yeah, kind of taking you through what my book explores. So as I say, it kind of begins with the projects which I did as part of a PhD in music composition at Keele University. So Keele's kind of an interesting place because I was originally drawn there for my undergraduate because they do a sort of dual honours thing, so you can study multiple subjects instead of focusing on just one. And I guess since then I've always had quite a sort of eclectic interdisciplinary approach to things. So I was primarily studying computer music and electroacoustic composition, but I was also doing things with audiovisual composition and experiments with game engines at the time. Later continued some of this stuff working at Wrexham Glyndŵr University and the computing department there, and later Aalborg University and lots of other places. So I've sort of moved from kind of music more in a sort of computing direction, I guess, over time, and I've ended up doing things with sort of DJing, virtual reality, bits with kind of biofeedback headsets and all sorts really. But I think sort of sound and music's always been sort of one of the starting points for me. So yeah, a lot of this work that I've done is kind of really related to something that interests me, which is the idea that if you're experiencing sort of a psychedelic hallucination or something like this, you might be able to hear sound and kind of see hallucinations which are related to the sounds or the music that you're hearing. So for me, this is a really interesting idea, and I kind of became interested in ways that you might represent that either through sound or through things like computer graphics and visuals. So this idea of kind of sound to image hallucinations, I guess, would be a form of synesthesia. And that's kind of the core idea that I think I'm interested in pretty much all of this. So my earlier book, Inner Sound, kind of looked at a lot of the work in this area. So ranging from kind of shamanic art music to psychedelic rock, electroacoustic music, psychedelic films, visual music, DJing, and altered states in sort of games and VR experiences. So, you know, that's kind of, I guess, more serious pieces like the recent ayahuasca VR experience, but also, I guess, things like hallucinations, which are represented in games and things for entertainment. So things like the sort of Grand Theft Auto series. So yeah, a bit of a mixture. That book was kind of drawing it all together, sort of existing work that's out there, but the new one's kind of looking at my own stuff. So yeah, a lot of the earlier things were electroacoustic compositions, and I do have excerpts here, but I don't think we've got audio, so I'll just test it again. We can maybe, oh wait.
Is it doing it?
Yeah, okay, we do have something. Cool. Okay, so I'll just play a little relax then.
Great.
Yeah, so it's just a little clip. So this was, yeah, from sort of, I think sort of around 2009 or something. So this is sort of electroacoustic music, and the image that you see is like a kind of graphical score for it. And the general idea is that it takes you on a journey through sound, which is kind of analogous to a hallucination, basically. So later on, I was doing things like this, but as kind of laptop performances as well, and sort of making software tools and things. I also explored some things with, yeah, sort of performing with instruments with real-time processing. So this is just a little clip of a system I made for that, which was designed for a saxophone, and it's processed. So what I do is kind of transforming the sounds organic with various effects and things in a way that gives us sort of psychedelic presentation. So that was fun. And yeah, then there's kind of audio visual work as well. So this is one of the earlier ones, and I was kind of interested in exploring how to produce things but alongside sort of digital forms as well. Okay. And yeah, so later on, I was also doing things with direct animation where you basically paint on, in this case, 8mm film. So, okay, so that gives you a bit of a flavour of that one. And mezcal animations, the sounds kind of made with an empty mezcal bottle. Yeah, so this is one of my early game engine experiments where I was looking to basically sort of modify, this is a first-person shooter game, Quake, and I was trying to kind of like modify it in real time so that you have these sort of transformations to the way it looks, and also the sounds, with the idea of kind of giving you a simulated altered state from a first-person perspective. You have a lot of these kind of normally so we're normally static. So I was basically animating them using a MIDI controller, so you could remix the game in real time. And then you have a soundtrack that goes with it. This is kind of now how most of the video games you're now normally when you see these things in kind of commercial games like sort of cyberpunk or whatever, they're basically kind of animating things like the sort of post-processing and stuff to give you an impression of an altered state. So this was the Psych Dome. This was a project in Glyndŵr University at North Wales. So this is in a mobile full dome. And basically this was a project where so essentially you have projections inside the dome, and then you have a real-time soundtrack that's generated with it, but all of the sounds and visuals are kind of modulated by the signals from consumer-grade EEG headset. So it kind of changes the way that it looks and sounds like each time a person goes into it, wearing a headset basically. And all of the kind of visual patterns and things are sort of related to the sort of spiral patterns and things that I was looking at as part of my PhD, which were sort of described in mescaline research by Heinrich Kluver as being these kind of form constants, basically. So I was kind of interested in representing those with sort of computer graphics and things. Yeah. So, and yeah, I did present this at EVA in 2014. So that was when the demo there. Yeah, later got into doing some sort of VJ stuff because a lot of my earlier video stuff was kind of fixed media. I got more interested in kind of being able to mix this stuff live. So in this case, it's not my music, but it's kind of live mix going with data. So yeah, at this point I was kind of, with some of the earlier stuff I was doing, I was kind of more interested in sort of representing maybe hallucinations and altered states specifically. But by this point I was moving towards being interested in just this kind of mechanism of sort of sound to image, basically, as a kind of synesthetic form. So more like imitating something that you might experience in a hallucination, but not a hallucination specifically. That kind of makes sense. Yeah, these are some of the paintings I did around these kind of ideas as well. Some of these were sort of augmented reality enhanced, so you can kind of view this one on the right, and the sort of postcards kind of come to life if you view them through the app. And then basically this brings me to my most recent stuff, which is so Cyberdream was my virtual reality project, which was kind of translating some of these ideas of kind of VJ performance and things into a sort of VR experience, into a sort of short form. So it lasts about 5 minutes, and you can also generate sound and your own images in it with the controllers. So this is what it looks like. Yeah, so that was kind of my most recent project, really. So I showed that at SIGGRAPH Asia in 2021. It hasn't been kind of released in any form, but if anyone wants to try it, just send me an email and I'll send you an APK. It's for Oculus Quest and it works on Quest 2 as well. So yeah, that's the kind of spectrum of stuff. And then I sort of distill this at the end into three frameworks, which I'm not going to attempt to describe in detail here, because obviously that's sort of what the book is for. But it's essentially psychedelic journeys in sound. This idea of simulating altered states through things like game engines, and then the last one is kind of synesthetic visualizations of sound, which is sort of where I've ended up with stuff, which I see is kind of related to hallucinations and psychedelic experiences, but it's not as kind of directly related as some of the stuff I was doing earlier on. And then obviously I get to the kind of hard sell part. So there's a special discount code, 20% off, which Palgrave has given me. The list price is quite expensive on this book. It's sort of academic book pricing, which makes me slightly uncomfortable, but there you go. I do have a few copies with me, which I'm selling for £40, which is cheaper than you'll find it anywhere else.
Signed.
If you want it, yeah. And I have a final couple of